Hey, everybody, it's today. You know what that means. It's time for another Sarcastic Distractions. And together, as always, I'm with the Gentleman Society of Podcasts, myself, Harvey, my heterosexual life mate, David Shergold, and the ever-loving AJ.
I love
Hey,
you.
boys. I love you too.
Howdy do.
And today, we're talking about a subject that is very close to our hearts, and that is the topic of stand-up comedy. And is this the world's last line of truth stairs? And what I mean by that is is stand-up comedy throughout the years an actual honest form of communication that we don't get anywhere else in terms of telling truth through comedy. So I thought that'd be fun to look at today. We could talk about that. But before we get into that, let's just talk a little bit about our own personal experiences with stand-up and things like that. AJ, do you got any stories you want to tell us about that?
Oh, gee. I've enjoyed stand-up comedy ever since I was a young feller. I remember probably the first one I got into was Dennis Leary, No Cure for Cancer. And then I watched Eddie Murphy's Raw and Delirious a lot, to the point where my mom would yell from upstairs, "What the hell are you watching?" I guess it must have been the cursing. I don't know. But then, yeah, kind of grew from there. I started getting into all facets. I enjoy Steve Martin's a good one. Richard Pryor, George Lopez.
Yeah.
So I've comedy, stand-up comedy has always been something I've been drawn to, I guess. Yeah,
It's my favorite form of storytelling. I think my favorite
for
form
sure.
of medium. David, how about you? Do you have any?
So I'm on the opposite side, as we've already kind of pre-chatted about, where certainly I'm aware of the stand-up comedies and things of that nature, but I've never been a huge stand-up guy. Never been into it. I've seen the odd cuts. I don't think I've ever sat down and watched even any of the classics start to finish. It's always just been a pick up here, YouTube video there, that sort of thing. I've never been in it. And as we'll get into, and I'm kind of pre-leading. I attempted to watch some of the ones you shared out, but yeah, and again, there's no knock against stand-up comedy. I smiled, I was amused, but I never really got into it. I never fully laughed, any of those things that I would kind of expect or I would get from maybe a normal comedy show or anything like that.
Right.
For whatever reason.
Very interesting. Well, thanks. I have a long history when it comes to stand-up. I remember the first time, I think it was Delirious too, but I remember not being allowed to watch Delirious.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad had someone over, they were watching it. I don't know how old I was, but it must have been like 10 or something. When did Delirious come out on HBO? I don't even know when that was.
Oh God,
Yeah, but I remember being in bed and not like being allowed to watch it and sneaking down the stairs. I'm like, this is like, you could do that? You could just get up on stage and wear that outfit, just say nasty. I want to do that. I was bitten by like right there. Anywhere it was like my first so just major drug reference points today. What we've done is we've kind of observed 4 specials in the last decade or so, starting with Carlin's "It's Bad for You" back in 2008, Ricky Gervais's "Humanity," and then Dave Chappelle's "Equanimity," and "The Bird Revelation," which just recently came out, and Mr. Kevin Hart. 0 bleeps given, which I thought was hilarious. So I want to talk about how stand-up comedy specifically, but comedy in general, but stand-up comedy has really been so relevant in our lives over the last, I'd say 70 years, 75 years, and how it's transformed and grew up with our culture, at least North American culture. I can't really speak for, other cultures because I don't live there, but I'm sure maybe there's something similar. And I do you guys know the history of like for me, there's 3 pillars of comedy that make what we hear possible now, and that's Lenny Bruce, I'd say Richard Pryor, and then I'd probably say Carlin. Like those 3 are the pillars of comedy. You might want to throw in Eddie Murphy, but we just don't see him as much. So I don't know. Are you guys aware of Lenny Bruce? Do you guys know his story?
I know that Tommy Chong had a lot to do with Lenny Bruce. Actually, he helped get Cheech and Chong to where they are. I'm pretty sure he used to perform in a strip club, the same strip club that Tommy Chong and Cheech Marin would perform in. And but other than that, I know he was more outspoken than others at that point in time.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah, he liked his he liked his cuss words.
Did he ever? David, do you remember? Do you know who Lenny Bruce is?
I do not know Lenny Bruce.
So Lenny Bruce was a comedian. I'm gonna get all my timelines wrong, so everyone can beat me up. I believe it was in the 50s or 60s, and before then, it was very vanilla comedy. You know, you didn't have any sort of off-color jokes. Hence the term vanilla, or anything like that. But what he would do is he would just challenge the social norms and just talk about things like cuss words. He's like, let's talk about the word fuck. And then he would just talk about that word and how it makes place and how it would be different if you said, well, you know, I'm not Lenny Bruce, so I'm not bastardizing his act here, but he'll say like, well, the difference between saying, you know, who gives a fuck versus, well, what the fuck are you doing, or you're a fucker, or, you know, things like that. Like he'll break all that down. But because of the time that stuff wasn't being said, he would get arrested for it, like all the time, to the point where like officers would be called in and they would line the walls of the club that he was in, waiting for him to finish his act, and then they would literally arrest him, throw him into jail.
Interesting.
Now, there's a lot more on Lenny Bruce, and I implore all those listening to go check him out because he's so important to comedy. To get a really good fix, is a great documentary out there called it is called "Can't We Take a Joke?" I think you can find it on Prime, and talks about his history and then some. What makes that so important is because of Lenny Bruce being so unafraid and being able to say things like that. We had people like Richard Pryor and other comedians start to fill in those gaps. And then we started to grow this stand-up culture that exists alongside society today. Special was Is It Bad For You? Or Is Bad For You in 2008. And even that in his, like, what was he, 70 years old, I think he was at that time. And, you know, he's talking about, which is very different from the other comedians, like the benefits of being old, like how great it is to do all this stupid shit and get away with it because you're old. Which, I mean, you know, if you're a person who is getting up there, you're worrying about your age, seeing someone that you admire and appreciate telling you like, it ain't all bad, you know, might help you ease through those kinds of moments.
Yeah, comedy can definitely be a very powerful thing to even make you change the way you look at something. Also, like you're saying, depending on who's giving it to you, you know, I'd take it from somebody who gives more of a commentary, like George Carlin is probably just a funny human being giving you his point of view, less of a joke, right? Whereas like Steve Martin or even Dennis Leary, yeah, he was pulling from politics and everything like that, but I feel like it was a little more exaggerated, where he was actually telling a joke with a punchline.
Yeah.
Whereas George Carlin is, I think he's just a really funny guy, and this is what he thought, right? And you laughed. So yeah, definitely. Comedy can ease things and make you feel better about life.
Give you that different perspective. Yeah, I would agree with that. From about 10-ish years ago, certainly with yourself. But again, I don't really remember. I just remember kind of sitting there and I was a little bored. More what I remember is seeing him recently on TV, you know, watching him with the kids on the train station show.
Right on.
That was the last time I think I saw George Carlin.
One of the world's dirtiest man is a freaking child.
He was the conductor.
I wanted to highlight too Ricky Gervais. I think he's a unique comedian, and Humanity was his 2018 special. What made that great is he hadn't performed anything for like 6 years, so he hadn't done anything prior to this, and then he just gets up on stage and just talks for like an hour and 10 minutes, and like the whole time you're like watching and you're never bored. Like, it never takes you out of the moment. I'm like, oh, that's amazing. And I feel like he's your he's your atheist comedian. Like, he's the one championing. It's okay to be an atheist, and here's why religion is stupid. Right? Like, he likes to poke on evolution, and he one thing in the humanity I like that he does is he takes understandings of evolution and puts them on to different subjects. And I don't know, he's just phenomenal. Talking about pardon?
I'm just about to just jump in just real quick. And again,
Sure,
my opinion is particular to me. I made it about 30 minutes through the one you recommended.
Yeah, you were.
It was just, I thought it was kind of him repeating himself over and over. It made me smile periodically. Like, I'm not like, it's not like I sat there offended or anything. Nothing of that nature. Just it was him just chatting away his opinions. Okay, I smiled here and there. And what's funny is, I'm not gonna lie, I did him last of the ones you shared with me, thinking I'm probably gonna find him funny because I've seen him in movies and such, and he's made me smile and laugh. I made it about 30 minutes, and I was like, okay, I should move on to. I'm bored.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And what are your thoughts on that one, AJ?
I watched that quite a while ago. I think Ricky Gervais I personally think he's very funny. I think I like seeing a different point of view from even, a different culture, even though we all speak English. They're, it's a different culture over in the UK, so they do get, different shit happens and whatnot. But yeah, his points of view are definitely unique. I could liken him to again another more of a storyteller than a joke teller.
Yeah,
if that makes any sense. Like out of what you sent me or sent all of us, yeah, Ricky Gervais storyteller, George Carlin storyteller, Dave Chappelle storyteller, and you're getting that from another aspect, another point of view, if you will, from a different race. Different races see different things in different ways. Don't much like Kevin Hart though.
Oh, well,
we'll get there.
Yeah. Honestly, I think he's probably the greatest comedian of our time right now, in my personal opinion, and it matters. So, just because I find he's saying the most relevant information, as well as he ain't pulling any punches, and he's also the guy that, like, I can't tell if he's telling the truth or not. Like, he's that good that I don't know if it's an actual story or if it's a joke or if it's, like, I don't know. Right?
Yeah,
and he all does it.
That's a good point. No, that's definitely a good point. I never thought of it that way.
And he's also doing it at this cadence like nobody else. Like, he's like super slow, very easy, very chill, and then when he's got like a point that he wants to say, and then he'll kind of like, he doesn't. He just knows. Like, I think they all do. Like, they know their performance. But him, I don't know. He's just on another level. And maybe the fact that he smokes everywhere. I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Because you're not allowed to smoke in buildings. And he's smoking in buildings. It's like, oh, that's really cool.
You don't give
he's
a shit.
a cool guy.
My sister went to the show where he had the dope ahead of time, and he was really bad.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she and her husband at the time drove to into Michigan there, and she was at the show. She got to experience it.
So
I didn't hold that against him when I attempted to watch. I made it about another. I have it written down halfway. I started multitasking, doing other things, and then I realized I actually wasn't even paying attention anymore.
All right. Dave's attention span.
Like, I really like Jimmy Carr. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of, but he's more
of course.
He's more of a setup punchline, one-liner kind of. He's just spitting jokes out left and right. He's not really telling many stories. So, but I dig that, and that's again subjective. I know
maybe that's what I
need.
That's
annoying.
Well, you got to think Dave has a very specific skill set within his comedy, right? Like, he's writing the long game. What?
I was being an ass. Sorry.
Like, when you watch that, like, yeah, you might get a few laughs here and there, but like, you have to kind of stick him through because he's tying up, like, or he's starting jokes, and then he's kind of tying them up in the at the beginning of a set, and then he'll tie them up in the last end of a set. Like, that's just one thing that he's very good at. And like, what I know it's kind of stupid, but in Equanimity, when he just says the stupid thing is like I'm so good, I can I can make any joke out of a punchline. And he's like, the punchline is kicked her in the pussy. And then the whole thing is like he's doing this, and then he sets you up for the joke, and then everybody laughs. But then he goes on with the set, and he's doing all these things, and at the very end, it's like I kicked her in the pussy. Like everybody roars, losing their mind, and that's a huge long game to play. Like that's a huge long burn, and he's just such a master at it that he just knows, right? It's just his forte. That was my favorite joke when he was saying about that. Such a horrible joke, but Chappelle's like, Weinstein looks like a guy that would have to rape somebody. There's no way anyone's gonna openly want to have sex with him.
Oh yeah, he looks like quite the blob. Yeah, I remember that one.
He does. I'm just like, wow, that's just amazing. You're saying that, but yeah, hilarious. That's the beauty of comedy. You can kind of, you could say what you want. I don't know if it's true moving forward.
It depends. Well, yeah,
and then we're gonna,
who it is, right?
Yeah,
I think it depends on
your audience. Right?
Russell Peters seems to be able to get away with it. Russell Peters seems to be able to make fun of any race, religion, color, background, whatever. And for some reason, he's still filling stadiums.
Well, not right now, but yeah, outside of the pandemic, yeah.
Yeah. We can't blame any pandemic stuff on the comics, good or bad.
So let's talk about the other controversial comedian that apparently I'm standing on a lonely island here. Speaking of great comedians, Kevin Hart, $0 given, recorded in 2020 from the comfort of his own home.
Was it though?
Yeah.
Was it his own home? Do you really think he has a stage in his living room in front of his fireplace? I highly fucking doubt it.
Yeah. I wouldn't put it past him. Have you seen the crazy shit that guy does? Like, I mean,
I maybe I'd have to see like a behind the scenes picture or just yeah.
You know what got me was like that hidden wall.
House.
That like hidden wall in the back when people are coming out with the pizza. It's like, wait a second, like. Just seemed kind of, or door, whatever.
I don't believe I got that far. I didn't get to. I
didn't get that far either.
Yeah, I didn't. Again, because I see where you were going when you sent us the suggestions for the other three guys, because they're very similar in the way that that they tell comedy or whatever, however you want, perform comedy.
Sure.
I feel like Kevin Hart is very similar to your generic comedian.
Oh,
he
okay.
I got a lot of Eddie Murphy vibes out of it, just the way he constructs a joke. But I didn't feel like there was anything poignant or anything that I should really give a shit about when I was watching his special versus stuff that Ricky Gervais says or stuff that George Carlin says. Those guys seem like it's more of a pick up a newspaper and let's read the newspaper today. And this is going on in the world. I'm a funny, like, they're just funny people in general. Where it seemed like the joke is less constructive and it's more of a comment from a guy who's funny. Whereas Kevin Hart's a funny guy, but he has the setup and the punchline. And then the segue. Setup, punchline, segue. Setup, punchline, segue. Right? It was a lot of other, I don't want to say derivative, but yeah, derivative of a lot of other comedians. And it feels cookie cutter. To me. Whereas the other fellas you sent, and you're speaking of Lenny Bruce and stuff like that. Even Sam Kinison, something like that. It's more of a funny social commentary. Whereas I could give two shits what your wife thinks about your email fucking text chain. I don't care. I don't care about your kid's private school. You're a rich guy bitching at me about being rich.
What you're saying is you give Kevin Hart special $0 is what you're saying.
I give it $0. I would rather watch a walrus fart.
Wow. There's videos on that. I should look that up. Guessing similar consensus from you too.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, just on that one. Yeah, I made it. What was it? That one I made fairly long. I got to about the last almost 20 minutes, but I couldn't finish it, unfortunately. I tried. Nothing against Kevin Hart. Again, that's the big thing for me is, as we talked about at the beginning, I really don't have a good comparison between them as to why. I just did not enjoy them for whatever reason. And as you know, I mentioned that before we started the actual video, like I started poking around a bit on the Netflix just to see what they had for stand-up comics, and only one really had me kind of interested. Unfortunately, I had to turn off to go make dinner, and that was Eliza.
Eliza Schlesinger. Yeah.
Yeah, like
funny. Yeah, she's funny.
yeah,
Very funny.
yeah, that one I was actually amused. She was making me laugh. It wasn't anything. It was nothing specific. She just, you know, and we touched on this earlier. She just kind of hit story, 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 hit story, 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 hit, and I was laughing. I got to admit.
You know, it's funny that you say touch back on AJ's point about whether someone just basically having a social commentary and then thinking of it being funny and going on about it. Like the process of writing comedy, it's hard. Like it's really hard. Even if you've got a funny point, I don't think people realize like, and everybody's got their own style. I only know this here because I aspire to hopefully tell jokes in front of people one day. And in doing so, like it's a huge refinement process. So the idea is you take a joke you think is funny, you have no idea if it is actually funny, but you think it's funny, and you tell it to people. And then based off that feedback is how you transform that joke and you turn it into something. And then as you get more comfortable saying it, it becomes a part of your repertoire, and then it just becomes effortless, and then it just becomes like it's just off the top of your head, right? Like it's a whole process that could take months, could take years. Like Joe Rogan describes it. He goes, every time he goes to do a special, he's basically spends like 2 years generating material and going to the local clubs, performing that material, refining it, and then he basically gets it to where he's got like an hour worth of material that he can use. Then he performs it, but then now it's out in the world, so he can't just perform all that shit that he performed on that special in like the clubs again, because I mean everyone's like, oh, we've heard that already. So now he's got to go work on new material, and I would imagine there's a similar process for many comedians that have specials, maybe not the same, but something where you generate that and then you kind of have to offload that information and move on. That's incredibly difficult, right? To constantly come up with new material to joke about and kind of process a machine with that. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Yes.
None of you guys have written a joke ever?
No.
Oh, you this all off the top of your head when we fuck around, really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I would write this shit down. What's wrong with you?
And even if you wrote it down, completely out of context, it's like, okay, yeah, what? It's like when you try to retell the story to someone. Yeah, I was out with Chris, and oh, we were having a great time. You know, back when you could still go to a bar, and we chatted about, you know, Steve Martin. We made up this joke about how he talks, and here's what the joke was, and they're like, okay, great, you had fun.
Had to be there.
Well, I wanted to just quickly touch upon, as we're kind of wrapping up here, just on more about comedy and how it's kind of shaped us. I remember as a kid, before the internet was what it is today, and I remember, you know, mom and dad or whatever would watch like the news at like 6 or 11, and then you know whenever late night show was on. For me, Conan was my favorite, but whatever was on, I would feel like that was the real news. You know, I'd go listen to them and get like, you know, and then eventually that turned into kind of like the Daily Show where we had Jon Stewart, and then we started to get these all comedy news things, and like that's how people get their news now. Like that's how people choose to be informed is through comedians rather than the CNNs and Foxes of the world. I think that's just an interesting point that, you know, spoonful of sugar, I guess, right?
Yeah. Well, for me, it was, you know, more my teenage years, and it would have been Saturday Night Live.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's
not as frequent, but every week Saturday Night Live, I'd be there to watch, you know, and I'd laugh and learn what the heck is this fake? And I would go and I would research. Oh no, this actually happened.
Yeah.
So it was a type of news source.
I remember every Monday, Dave, you and I and a bunch of us would get together and discuss
high school.
SNL. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Sorry,
what was I going to say? Noticing that most late night, you going back to late night there, you have your monologues, and that's a nice little
Yeah.
10-minute stand-up comedy bit, but
Yeah.
that pertains to the world today.
What's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I had another point, but I can't. It's gone.
It's
It's gone.
Speaking of
talking about Speaking
news,
of
as we're wrapping up here, gentlemen, do you guys have any jokes you want to say since this is a comedy episode?
No.
no.
No jokes.
No, I was like the one. Knock knock.
Who's there?
Amy Fisher.
Amy Fisher.
Bang!
No,
Wow.
Like, you
Talk
get
about it.
that one was on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Oh wow!
Right?
Really?
Right?
Controversial.
Right.
Wow,
So,
that's awesome.
Yeah,
Wow. Well, thanks a little
deep cuts.
Yeah, anecdote. Love it. Well, I think we've talked all we can about these comedy specials since you guys didn't get through. Everybody for hanging out with us today. And as always, I just want to let you know, if you're listening to this, you matter. You are important to us. We appreciate you giving your time to us, and just so you know, you're very important. So thank you so much for giving us your time today. And as always, my name is Harvey, and that is Mr. David Shergold.
Hello.
And Mr. AJ Marsh.
Everybody go out and get yourself a smile. Make sure it's a good smile. Make sure you're doing good to get that smile. But have a smile. You deserve it, especially in these times.
And how can you not say amen to that? Until next week, everybody, have a happy day. And this has been another Sarcastic Distraction.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye now.